As their sweetness slid smoothly down his throat, Takezo grew giddy. The fingers holding the cake shook. I'm alive, he thought over and over, vowing that from that moment on he would live a very different sort of life. The reddish clouds of morning turned their cheeks rosy. As he began to see Otsu's face more clearly, and hunger gave way to a sated calm. It seemed like a dream that he was sitting here safe and sound with her. When it gets light, we will have to be very careful. We are almost at the provincial border, said Otsu. Takezo's eyes widened. The border? That's right, I forgot I have to go to Hinagura. Hinagura? Why? That's where they've got my sister locked up. I have to get her out of there. Guess I have to say goodbye. Otsu peered into his face in stern silence. If that's the way you feel about it, go. But if I had thought you were going to just desert me, I wouldn't have left Miyamoto. What else can I do? Just leave her there in the stockade? With a look that pressed in on him, she took his hand in hers. Her face, her whole body was aflame with passion. Takezo, she pleaded, I'll tell you how I feel about this later, when there's time, but please don't leave me alone here. Take me with you wherever you go. But I can't. Remember, she gripped his hand tight. Whether you like it or not, I'm staying with you. If you think I'll be in the way when you're trying to rescue Ogen, then I'll go to Himeji and wait. Alright, do that, he agreed instantly. You will definitely come, won't you? Of course. I'll be waiting at the Hanada Bridge just outside Himeji. I'll wait for you there, whether it takes 100 days or 1,000. Answering with a slight nod, Takezo was off without further ado, racing along the ridge leading from the pass into the far distant mountains. Otsu raised her head to watch him till his body melted into the scenery. Back in the village, Osugi's grandson came charging up to the Hoenn manor house, shouting, Grammar, grammar! Wiping his nose with the back of his hand, he peered into the kitchen and said excitedly, Grammar, have you heard? Something awful has happened. Osugi, who was standing before the stove, coaxing a fire with a bamboo fan, barely looked his way. What's all the fuss about? Grammar, don't you know Takezo has escaped? Escaped? She dropped the fan in the flames. What are you talking about? This morning he wasn't in the tree. The rope was cut. Theater, you know what I said about telling tales? It's the truth, Grammar. Honest. Everybody's talking about it. Are you absolutely sure? Yes, ma'am, and up at the temple they are searching for Otsu. She has gone too. Everybody's running around shouting. The visible effect of the news was colorful. Osugi's face whitened shade by shade as the flames of her burning fan turned from red to blue to violet. Her face soon seemed drained of all blood, so much so that Theater shrank in fear. Theater, yes, run as fast as your legs can carry you, fetch your daddy right away, then go down to the riverbank and get Uncle gone. And hurry, Otsugi's voice quivered. Before Hiater even reached the gate, a crowd of mattering villagers had arrived. Among them were Osugi's son-in-law, Uncle Gon, other relatives, and a number of tenants. That girl Osu has run away too, hasn't she? And Takuan's not around either. Looks pretty funny if you ask me. They were in it together, that's for sure. Wonder what the old woman will do, her family's honors at stake. The son-in-law and uncle gone, carrying lances passed down to them from their ancestors, stared blankly toward the house. Before they could do anything, they needed guidance, so they stood there, restlessly waiting for Osugi to appear and issue orders. Granny, someone finally shouted, haven't you heard the news? I'll be there in a minute, came the reply. All of you just be quiet and wait. Osugi quickly rose to the occasion. When she had realized the awful news had to be true, her blood boiled, but she managed to control herself enough to kneel before the family altar. After silently saying a prayer of supplication, she raised her head, opened her eyes, and turned around. Calmly, she opened the doors of the sword chest, pulled out a drawer, and withdrew a treasure weapon. Having already donned attire suitable for a manhunt, she slipped the short sword in her obi and went to the entranceway, where she tied her sandal thong securely round her ankles. The all hush that greeted her as she approached the gate made clear they knew what she was dressed for. The stubborn old woman meant business and was more than ready to avenge the insult to her house. "Everything's going to be all right," she announced in clipped tones. "I'm going to chase down that shameless hussy myself and see to it she receives her proper punishment." Her jaw clamped shut. She was already walking briskly down the road before someone in the crowd spoke up. "If the old woman is going, we should go too." All the relatives and tenants stood up and fell in behind their doughty matriarch, arming themselves as they went with sticks, fashioning bamboo lances hastily as they walked. They marched directly to Nakayama Pass, not even pausing to rest on the way. They reached it just before noon, only to find that they were too late. "We've let them get away," one man shouted. The crowd seethed with anger. To add to their frustration, a border official approached to inform them such a large group could not pass through. Angelgon came forward and pleaded honestly with the official, describing Takezo as a criminal, Otsu as evil, and Takuan as crazy. "If we drop this matter now," he explained, "it will sully the name of our ancestors. We will never be able to hold up our heads. We will be the laughing stock of the village. The whole Indian family might even have to abandon its land." The officer said he understood their predicament but could do nothing to help. The law's the law. He could perhaps send an inquiry on to Himeji and get them special permission to cross the border, but that would take time. Osugi, after conferring with her relatives and tenants, stepped in front of the official and asked, "In that case, is there any reason why two of us, myself and Uncle Gon, can't go through? Up to 5 people are permitted." Osugi nodded her acquiescence. Then, although it looked as if she was about to deliver a moving farewell, she instead called her followers together in a very matter-of-fact way. They lined up before her, staring attentively at her thin-lipped mouth and large protruding teeth. When they were all quiet, she said, "There's no reason for you to be upset. I anticipated something like this happening before we even set out. When I put on this short sword, one of the most prized Ho-Indian heirlooms, I knelt before our ancestors' memorial tablets and bade them a formal farewell. I also made 2 vows. One was that I would overtake and punish the brazen female who has smeared our name with mud. The other was that I would find out for sure, even if I died trying, whether my son Matahachi is alive. And if he is, I will bring him home to carry on the family name. I swore to do this, and I will do this, even if it means tying a rope around his neck and dragging him all the way back. He has an obligation not only to me and to those departed, but to you as well. He will then find a wife 100 times better than Otsu and blot out this disgrace for all time, so that the villagers will once again recognize our house as a noble and honorable one." As they were applauding and cheering, one man uttered something sounding like a groan. Osugi stared fixedly at her son-in-law. Now, Uncle Gon and I, she went on, are both old enough to retire. We are both in agreement on everything I have vowed to do, and he too is resolved to accomplish them, even if it means spending 2 or 3 years doing nothing else, even if it means walking the length and breadth of the country. While I'm gone, my son-in-law will take my place as head of the house. During that time, you must promise to work as hard as ever. I don't want to hear any of you neglecting the sick worms or letting weeds grow wild in the fields. Do you understand? Uncle Gon was nearly 50, Osugi 10 years older. The crowd seemed hesitant to let them go it alone, since they were obviously no match for Takezo in the event that they should ever find him. They all imagined him to be a madman who would attack and kill for the smell of blood alone. Wouldn't it be better, someone suggested, if you took 3 young men along with you? The man said that 5 can pass through. The old woman shook her head with vehemence. I don't need any help. I never have and never will. Ha! Everybody thinks Takezo is so strong, but he doesn't scare me. He's only a brat, not with not much more hair on him than when I knew him as a baby. I'm not his equal in physical strength, of course, but I haven't lost my wits. I can still outsmart an enemy or two, and Gon is not senile yet either. Now I've told you what I'm going to do, she said, pointing her index finger at her nose, and I'm going to do it. There's nothing left for you to do but go home. So go and take care of everything till we return. She shooed them away and walked up to the barrier, no one trying to stop her again. They called their goodbyes and watched as the old couple started their journey eastward down the mountainside. The old lady really has guts, doesn't she? Someone remarked. Another man cupped his hands and shouted, If you get sick, send a messenger back to the village. A third called solicitously, Take care of yourselves. When she could no longer hear their voices, Osugi turned to Uncle Gon. We don't have a thing to worry about, she assured him. We are going to die before those young people anyway. You are absolutely right, he replied with conviction. Uncle Gon made his living hunting, but in his younger days, he had been a samurai involved to hear him tell it in many a gory battle. Even now, his skin was healthily ruddy and his hair as black as ever. His surname was Fujikawa. Gon stood for Gonroku, his given name. As Motohachi's uncle, he was naturally quite concerned and upset about the recent goings-on. Granny, he said, What? You had the foresight to dress for the road, but I'm just wearing my everyday clothes. I have to stop somewhere for sandals and a hat. There's a tea house about halfway down this hill. So there is. Yes, I remember. It's called the Migasuki Tea House, isn't it? I'm sure they will have what I need. By the time they reached the tea house, they were surprised to see that the sun was beginning to set. They had thought they had more daylight hours ahead of them, since the days were growing longer with the approach of summer. More time to search on this, their first day in pursuit of their lost family honor. They had some tea and rested for a while. Then, as Osugi laid down the money for the bill, she said, Takano's too far to reach by nightfall. We'll have to make do with sleeping on those smelly mats at the pack horse driver's inn in Shinku, although not sleeping at all might be better than that. We need our sleep now more than ever. Let's get going, said Konroku, rising to his feet and clutching the new straw hat he had just bought. But wait just a minute. Why? I want to fill this bamboo tube with drinking water. Going around behind the building, he submerged his tube in a clear running brook till the bubbles stopped rising to the surface. Walking back toward the road in front, he glanced through a side window into the dim interior of the tea house. Suddenly he came to a halt, surprised to see a figure lying on the floor, covered with straw matting. The smell of medicine permeated the air. Gonroku couldn't see the face, but he could discern long black hair strewn every which way on the pillow. Angelgon, hurry up, Osugi cried impatiently. Coming, what kept you? There seems to be a sick person inside, he said, walking behind her like a chastened dog. What's so unusual about that? You are as easy to distract as a child. Sorry, he apologized hastily. He was as intimidated by Osugi as anyone else, but knew better than most how to manage her. They set off down the fairly steep hill, leading to the Harima Road. The road, used daily by pack horses from the silver mines, was pitted with potholes. Don't fall down, Granny, Gon advised. How dare you patronize me? I can walk on this road with my eyes closed. Be careful yourself, you old fool. Just then a voice greeted them from behind. You two are pretty spree, aren't you? They turned to see the owner of the tea house on horseback. Oh yes, we just had a rest at your place, thank you. And where are you off to? Tatsuno, at this hour? There's no doctor between here and there, even on horseback. It will take me at least till midnight. Is it your wife who is sick? Oh no, his brows knitted. If it were my wife or one of the children, I wouldn't mind, but it's a lot of trouble to go to for a stranger, someone who just stopped in to take a rest. Oh, said Uncle Gon, is it the girl in your back room? I happened to glance in and see her. Osugi's brows now knitted as well. Yes, the shopkeeper said. While she was resting, she started shivering, so I offered her the back room to lie down in. I felt I had to do something. Well, she didn't get any better. In fact, she seems much worse. She's burning up with fever. Looks pretty bad. Osugi stopped in her tracks. Is the girl about 16 and very slender? Yes, about 16, I would say. Says she comes from Miyamoto. Osugi, winking at Gonroku, began poking around in her obi. A look of distress came over her face as she exclaimed, Oh, I've left them back at the tea house. Left what? My prayer beads. I remember now. I put them down on a stool. Oh, that's too bad, said the shopkeeper, turning his horse around. I'll go back for them. Oh no, you've got to fetch the doctor. That sick girl's is more important than mine beads. We'll just go back and pick them up ourselves. And Gagon was already on his way, striding rapidly back up the hill. As soon as Osugi disposed of the solicitous tea house owner, she hurried to catch up. Before long, they were both puffing and panting. Neither spoke. It had to be Otsu. Otsu had never really shaken off the fever she caught the night they dragged her in out of the storm. Somehow she forgot about feeling sick during the few hours she was with Takezo. But after he left her, she had walked only a short way before beginning to give in to pain and fatigue. By the time she got to the tea house, she felt miserable. She did not know how long she had been lying in the back room, deliriously begging for water time and time again. Before leaving, the shopkeeper had looked in on her and urged her to try to stick it out. Moments later, she had forgotten he had ever spoken to her. Her mouth was parched. She felt as if she had a mouthful of thorns. Master, water, please, she called out feebly. Hearing no reply, she raised herself on her elbows and craned her neck toward the water basin just outside the door. Slowly, she managed to crawl to it, but as she put her hand on the bamboo dipper at the side, she heard a rain shatter fall to the ground somewhere behind her. The tea house was little more than a mountain head to begin with, and there was nothing to prevent anyone from simply lifting out any or all of the loosely fitted shutters. Osugi and Uncle Gon stumbled in through the opening. "I can't see a thing," complained the old woman in what she thought was a whisper. "Wait a minute," Gon replied, heading toward the hearth room where he stood. He stared up the embers and threw on some wood to get a bit of light. "She's not in here, Granny." "She must be. She can't have gotten away." Almost immediately, Osugi noticed that the door in the back room was ajar. "Look out there," she shouted. Otsu, who was standing just outside, threw the dipper full of water through the narrow opening into the old woman's face and sped downhill like a bird in the wind, sleeves and skirt trailing behind her. Osugi ran outside and spat out an imprecation. Gone, do something, do something. Did she get away?" "Of course she did. We certainly gave her enough warning. Making all that noise, you will have to drop the shatter." The old woman's face contorted with rage. "Can't you do something?" Uncle Gon directed his attention to the deer-like form flying in the distance. He raised his arm and pointed. "That's her, right?" "Don't worry, she doesn't have much of a head start. She is sick, and anyway she only has the legs of a girl. I will catch up with her in no time." He tucked his chin in and broke into a run. Osugi followed close behind. "Uncle Gon," she cried, "you can use your sword on her, but don't cut off her head until after I have had a chance to give her a piece of my mind." Uncle Gon suddenly let out a scream of dismay and fell to his hands and knees. "What's the matter?" cried Osugi, coming up behind him. "Look down," Osugi said. Directly in front of them was a steep drop into a bamboo-covered ravine. "She dived into that?" "Yes, I don't think it's very deep, but it's too dark to tell. I'll have to go back to the tea house and get a torch." As he knelt staring into the ravine, Osugi cried, "What are you waiting for, you dolt?" and gave him a violent shove. There was the sound of feet trying to gain a footing, scrambling desperately before coming to a stop at the bottom of the ravine. "You old witch," shouted Uncle Gon angrily. "You just get on down here yourself. See how you like it." Takezo, arms folded, sat atop a large boulder and stared across the valley at the Hinagura stockade. Under one of those roofs, he reflected, his sister was imprisoned. But he had sat there from dawn to dusk the previous day and all day today, unable to devise a plan to get her out. He intended to sit until he did. His thinking had progressed to the point where he was confident he could outmaneuver the 50 or 100 soldiers guarding the stockade, but he continued to ponder the lay of the land. He had to get not only in, but out. It was not encouraging. Behind the stockade was a deep gorge, and at the front, the road into the stockade was well protected by a double gate. To make matters worse, the two of them would be forced to flee across a flat plateau, which offered not a single tree to hide behind. On a cloudless day such as this, a better target would be hard to find. The situation thus called for a night assault, but he had observed that the gates were closed and locked before sunset. Any attempt to jimmy them open would doubtless set off a cacophonous alarm of wooden clappers. There seemed no foolproof way to approach the fortress. "There's no way," Takezo thought sadly. "Even if I just took a long shot, risked my life and hers, it wouldn't work." He felt humiliated and helpless. How, he asked himself, did I get to be such a coward? A week ago, I wouldn't have even thought about the chances of getting out alive. For another half-day, his arms remained folded over his breast as if locked. He feared something he couldn't define and hesitated getting any closer to the stockade. Time and time again, he upbraided himself. "I've lost my nerve. I never used to be this way." Maybe staring death in the face makes cowards out of everyone. He shook his head. No, it wasn't that, not cowardice. He had simply learned his lesson, the one Takuan had taken so much trouble to teach, and could now see things more clearly. He felt a new calm, a sense of peace. It seemed to flow in his breast like a gentle river. Being brave was very different from being ferocious. He saw that now. He didn't feel like an animal. He felt like a man, a courageous man who has outgrown his adolescent recklessness. The life that had been given to him was something to be treasured and cherished, polished and perfected. He stared at the lovely clear sky, whose color alone seemed a miracle. Still, he could not leave his sister stranded, even if it meant violating, one last time, the precious self-knowledge he had so recently and painfully acquired. He had so recently and painfully acquired. A plan began to take shape. After nightfall, I would cross the valley and climb the cliff on the other side. The natural barrier may be a blessing in disguise. There's no gate at the back and it doesn't seem heavily guarded. He had hardly arrived at this decision when an arrow whizzed toward him and thudded into the ground inches from his toes. Across the valley, he saw a crowd of people milling about just inside the stockade. Obviously, they had spotted him. Almost immediately, they dispersed. He surmised it had been a test shot to see how he would react, and deliberately remained motionless upon his perch. Before long, the light of the evening sun began to fade behind the peaks of the western mountains. Just before darkness dropped, he arose and picked up a rock. He had spotted his dinner flying in the air over his head. He downed the bird on the first try, tore it apart, and sank his teeth into the warm flesh. While he ate, 20-odd soldiers moved noisily into position and surrounded him. Once in place, they let out a battle cry, one man shouting, "It's Takezo, Takezo from Yamato. He's dangerous, don't underestimate him," someone else warned. Looking up from his feast of raw fowl, Takezo trained a murderous eye on his would-be captors. It was the same look animals flash when disturbed in the midst of a meal. "Yah!" he yelled, seizing a huge rock and hurling it at the perimeter of this human wall. The rock turned red with blood, and in no time he was over it and away. Running straight toward the stockade gate, the men were agape. "What's he doing? Where's the fool going? He's out of his mind." He flew like a crazed dragonfly, with the war-whooping soldiers in full chase. By the time they reached the outer gate, however, he had already leaped over it. But now he was between the gates, in what was, in fact, a cage. Takezo's eyes took in none of this. He could see neither the pursuing soldiers nor the fence, nor the guards inside the second gate. He wasn't even conscious of knocking out with a single blow the sentinel who tried to jump him. With almost superhuman strength, he wrenched at a post of the inner gate, shaking it furiously till he was able to pull it out of the ground. Then he turned on his pursuers. He didn't know their number. All he knew was that something big and black was attacking him. Taking aim as best he could, he struck at the amorphous mass with the gatepost. A good number of lances and swords broke, flew into the air, and fell useless to the ground. "Ogin," cried Takezo, running toward the rear of the stockade. "Ogin, it's me." He glared at the buildings with fiery eyes, calling out repeatedly to his sister. Has it been has it all been a trick? He wondered in panic. One by one, he began battering down doors with the gatepost. The guards' chickens, squawking for dear life, flew in every direction. Again, when he failed to locate her, his hoarse cries became nearly unintelligible. In the shadows of one of the small, dirty cells, he saw a man trying to sneak away. Halt! He shouted, throwing the blood-stained gatepost at the weasel-like creature's feet. When Takezo leaped at him, he began to cry shamelessly. Takezo slapped him sharply on the cheek. "Where's my sister?" he roared. "What have they done to her?" "Tell me where she is or I'll beat you to death. She's not here. Day before yesterday they took her away. Orders from the castle." "Where, you stupid bastard? Where? Himeji. Himeji? Yes. If you are lying, I will." Takezo grabbed the sniveling mess by its hair. "It's true, I swear. It better be, or I'll come back just for you." The soldiers were closing in again, and Takezo lifted the man and hurled him at them. Then he disappeared into the shadows of the dingy cells. Half a dozen arrows flew by him, one sticking like a giant sewing needle in the skirt of his kimono. Takezo bit his thumbnail and watched the arrows speed by, then suddenly dashed for the fence and was over it in a flash. Behind him, there was a loud explosion. The echo of the gunshot roared across the valley. Takezo sped down the gorge, and as he ran, fragments of Takuan's teachings were racing through his head. Learn to fear that which is fearsome. Brute strength is child's play. The mindless strength of beasts. Have the strength of the true warrior. Real courage. Life is precious. The birth of Musashi. Takezo waited on the outskirts of the castle town of Himeji, sometimes keeping out of sight under Hanada Bridge, but more often standing on the bridge and obtrusively surveying the passers-by. When not in the immediate vicinity of the bridge, he would make short excursions around town, careful to keep his head low and his face concealed, like a beggar's, behind a piece of straw matting. It baffled him that Otsu had not yet appeared. Only a week had gone by since she swore to wait there, not 100 but 1,000 days. Once Takezo had made a promise, he was loath to break it, but with every passing moment, he grew more and more tempted to be on the move. Though his promise to Otsu was not the only reason he made his way to Himeji, he also had to find out where they were keeping Ogen. He was near the center of town one day when he heard a voice shouting his name. Footsteps came running after him. He looked up sharply to see Takuan approaching, calling, "Takezo, wait." Takezo was startled and, as usual in the presence of this monk, felt slightly humiliated. He had thought his disguise was foolproof and had been sure that no one, not even Takuan, would recognize him. The monk grabbed him by the wrist. "Come with me," he commanded. The urgency in his voice was impossible to ignore. "And don't make any trouble. I have spent a lot of time looking for you." Takezo followed meekly. He had no idea where they were going, but he once again found himself powerless. to resist this particular man. He wondered why he was free now, and for all he knew, they were headed straight back to the dreaded tree in Miyamoto, or perhaps into a castle dungeon. He had suspected they had his sister locked up somewhere in the castle's confines, but he hadn't a shred of evidence to back this up. He hoped he was right. If he too was taken there, at least they could die together. If they had to die, he could think of no one else he loved enough to share the final moments of precious life with. Himeji Castle loomed before his eyes. He could see now why it was called the White Crane Castle. The stately edifice stood upon huge stone ramparts like a great and proud bird descended from the heavens. Takuwan preceded him across the wide arcing bridge spanning the outer moat. A row of guards stood at attention before the riveted iron gate. The sunlight glancing off their drone lenses made Takezo, for a split second, hesitant to pass. Takuwan, without even turning, sensed this and with a slightly impatient gesture, urged him to keep moving. Passing under the gate turret, they approached the second gate, where the soldiers looked even more tense and alert, ready to fight at a moment's notice. This was the castle of a daimyo. It would take its inhabitants a while to relax and accept the fact that the country was successfully unified. Like many other castles of the time, it was far from accustomed to the luxury of peace. Takuwan summoned the captain of the guard. "I have brought him," he announced, handing Takezo over. The monk advised the man to take good care of him as previously instructed, but added, "Be careful, he's a lion cub with fangs. He's far from tame. If you tease him, he bites." Takuwan went through the second gate to the central compound where the daimyo's mansion was located. Apparently, he knew the way well. He needed neither a guide nor directions. He barely raised his head as he walked, and not a soul interrupted his progress. Heeding Takuwan's instructions, the captain didn't lay a finger on his charge. He simply asked Takezo to follow him. Takezo silently obeyed. They soon arrived at a bathhouse, and the captain instructed him to go in and get cleaned up. At this point, Takezo's spine stiffened, for he remembered all too well his last bath at Osugi House and the trap from which he had narrowly escaped. He folded his arms and tried to think, stalling for time and inspecting the surroundings. It was all so peaceful, an island of tranquility where a daimyo could, when not plotting strategies, enjoy the luxuries of life. Soon, a servant bearing a black cotton kimono and hakama arrived, bowing and saying politely, "I will lay these here. You can put them on when you come out." Takezo nearly wept. The outfit included not only a folding fan and some tissue paper, but a pair of long and short samurai swords. Everything was simple and inexpensive, but nothing was lacking. He was being treated like a human being again, and wanted to lift the clean cotton to his face, rub it to his cheek, and inhale its freshness. He turned and entered the bathhouse. Ikeda Terumasa, lord of the castle, leaned on an armrest and gazed out into the garden. He was a short man, with a cleanly shaven head and dark pock marks lining his face. Although not dressed in formal attire, his countenance was stern and dignified. "Is that him?" he asked Takuwan, pointing his folding fan. "Yes, that's him," answered the monk with a deferential bow. "He has a good face. You did well to save him. He owes his life to you, your lordship, not me." That's not so, Takuan, and you know it. If I just had a handful of men like you under my command, no doubt a lot of useful people would be saved, and the world would be the better for it. The daimyo sighed, my trouble is that all my men think their sole duty is to tie people up or behead them. An hour later, Takezo was seated in the garden beyond the veranda, his head bowed and his hands resting flat on his knees in an attitude of respectful attentiveness. Your name is Shimon Takezo, isn't it? Lord Ikeda asked. Takezo glanced up quickly to see the face of the famous man, then respectfully cast his eyes downward again. Yes, sir, he answered clearly. The house of Shimon is a branch of the Akamatsu family, and Akamatsu Masanori, as you well know, was once lord of this castle. Takezo's throat went dry. He was for once at a loss for words, having always thought of himself as the black sheep of the Shimon family, with no particular feelings of respect or awe for the daimyo. He was nonetheless filled with shame at having brought such complete dishonor on his ancestors and his family name. His face burned. What you have done is inexcusable, continued Terumasa in a sterner tone. Yes, sir, and I am going to have to punish you for it. Turning to Takuan, he asked, is it true that my retainer, Aoki Tenzemon, without my leave, promised you that if you capture this man, you could decide and mete out his punishment? I think you can best find that out by asking Tenzemon directly. I've already questioned him. Then did you think I would lie to you? Of course not. Tenzemon has confessed, but I wanted your confirmation. Since he is my direct vassal, his oath to you constitutes one from me. Therefore, even though I am lord of this fief, I have lost my right to penalize Takezo as I see fit. Penalize Takezo as I see fit. Of course, I will not permit him to go unpunished, but it is up to you what form the punishment is to take. Good, that is exactly what I had in mind. Then I assume you have given it some thought. Well, what shall we do with him? I think it would be best to place the prisoner in, what shall we say, straitened circumstances for a while. And how do you propose to do that? I believe you have somewhere in this castle a closed room, one loud rumor to be haunted. Yes, I do. The servants refused to enter it, and my retainers avoided it consistently, so it went unused. I now leave it as it is, since there is no reason to open it again. But don't you think it's beneath the dignity of one of the strongest warriors in the Tokugawa realm I don't know how to pronounce this word. Ikeda Terumasa to have a room in your castle where a light never shines. I never thought of it that way. Well, people think of things like that. It's a reflection on your authority and prestige. I say we should put a light there. If you will let me make use of that chamber, I'll keep Takezo there until I am ready to pardon him. He has had enough of living in total darkness. You hear that, don't you, Takezo? There was not a peep from Takezo, but Terumasa began laughing and said, "Fine." It was obvious from their excellent report that Takuan had been telling Aoki Tenseiman the truth that night at the temple. He and Terumasa, both followers of Zen, seemed to be on friendly, almost brotherly terms. After you have taken him to his new quarters, why don't you join me in the tea house? Terumasa asked the monk as he rose to leave. Oh, are you planning to demonstrate once again how inept you are at the tea ceremony? That's not even fair, Takuan. These days I have really started to get the knack of it. Come along later and I will prove to you I'm no longer simply an uncouth soldier. I'll be waiting. With that, Terumasa retired to the inner part of the mansion. Despite his short stature, he was barely 5 feet tall. His presence seemed to fill the many-story castle. It was always pitch dark high in the donjon where the haunted room was located. There was no calendar here, no spring, no fall, no sounds of everyday life. There was only one small lamp lighting a pale sallow-cheeked Takezo, and the topography section of Sun Tzu Art of War lay open on the low table before him. Sun Tzu said, among topographical features, there are those that are passable, there are those that suspend, there are those that confine, there are those that are steep, there are those that are distant. Whenever he came to a passage that particularly appealed to him, like this one, he would read it aloud over and over like a chant. He who knows the art of the warrior is not confused in his movements. He acts and is not confined. Therefore Sun Tzu said, he who knows himself and knows his enemy wins without danger. He who knows the heavens and the earth wins out over all. When his eyes blur from fatigue, he rinsed them with cool water from a small bowl he kept beside him. If the oil ran low and the lamp wick spattered, he simply put it out. Around the table was a mountain of books, some in Japanese, some in Chinese, books on Zen, volumes on the history of Japan. Takezo was virtually buried in these scholarly tomes. They had all been borrowed from Lord Ikeda's collection. When Takuan had sentenced him to confinement, he had said, you may read as much as you want. A famous priest of ancient times once said, I become immersed in the sacred scriptures and read thousands of volumes. When I come away, I find that my heart sees more than before. Think of this room as your mother's womb and prepare to be born anew. If you look at it only with your eyes, you will see nothing more than an unlit, closed cell. But look again more closely. Look with your mind and think. This room can be the wellspring of enlightenment, the same fountain of knowledge found and enriched by sages in the past. It is up to you to decide whether this is to be a chamber of darkness or one of light. Takezo had long since stopped counting the days. When it was cold, it was winter. One hot summer, he knew little more than that. The air remained the same, dank and musty, and the seasons had no bearing on his life. He was almost positive, however, that the next time the swallows came to nest in the donjons boarded over gunslots, it would be the spring of his third year in the womb. I will be 21 years old, he said to himself. Seized by remorse, he groaned as if in mourning. And what have I done in those 21 years? Sometimes he hid the memory of his early years, pressed in on him unrelentingly, engulfing him in grief. He would wail and moan, flail and kick, and sometimes sob like a baby. Whole days were swallowed up in agony, which, once it subsided, left him spent and lifeless, hair disheveled and heart torn apart. Finally, one day, he heard the swallows returning to the donjon's eaves. Once again, spring had flown from across the seas. Not long after its arrival, a voice, now sounding strange, almost painful to the ears, inquired, "Takezo, are you well?" The familiar head of Takuan appeared at the top of the stairs. Startled and much too deeply moved to utter a sound, Takezo grabbed hold of the monk's kimono sleeve and pulled him into the room. The servants who brought his food had never once spoken a word. He was overjoyed to hear another human voice, especially this one. "I have just returned from a journey," said Takuan. "You are in your third year here now, and I have decided that after gestating this long, you must be pretty well formed. I am grateful for your goodness, Takuan. I understand now what you have done. How can I ever thank you?" "Thank me," Takuan said incredulously. Then he laughed. "Even though you have had no one to converse with but yourself, you have actually learned to speak like a human being. Good. Today you will leave this place, and as you do so, hug your hard-earned enlightenment to your bosom. You are going to need it when you go forth into the world to join your fellow men." Takuan took Takezo just as he was to see Lord Ikeda. Although he had been relegated to the garden in the previous audience, a place was now made for him on the veranda. After the salutations and some perfunctory small talk, Terumasu lost no time in asking Takezo to serve as his vassal. Takezo declined. He was greatly honored, he explained, but he did not feel the time was yet right to go into a daimyo service. "And if I did so in this castle," he said, "ghosts would probably start appearing in the closed room every night, just as everyone says they do. Why do you say that? Did they come to keep you company? If you take a lamp and inspect the room closely, you will see black spots spattering the doors and beams. It looks like lacquer, but it's not. It's human blood. Most likely blood spilled by the Akamatsus, my forebears, when they went down to defeat in this castle." You may very well be right. Seeing those stains infuriated me. My blood boiled to think that my ancestors, who once ruled over this whole region, ended up being annihilated, their souls just blown about in the autumn winds. They died violently, but it was a powerful clan and they can be roused. That same blood flows in my veins, he went on, an intense look in his eyes. Unworthy though I am a member of the same clan, and if I stay in this castle, the ghosts may rouse themselves and try to reach me. In a sense, they already have, by making it clear to me in that room just who I am. But they could cause chaos, perhaps rebel, and even set off another bloodbath. We are not in an era of peace. I owe it to the people of this whole region not to tempt the vengeance of my ancestors. Terumasa nodded. I see what you mean. It's better if you leave this castle, but where will you go? Do you plan to return to Miyamoto? Live out your life there? Takezo smiled silently. I want to wander about on my own for a while. I see, the Lord replied, turning to Takuan. See that he receives many and suitable clothing, he commanded. Takuan bowed. Let me thank you for your kindness to the boy. Takuan Ikeda laughed. This is the first time you have ever thanked me twice for anything. I suppose that's true, Takuan grinned. It won't happen again. It's alright for him to roam about while he's still young, said Terumasa. But now that he's going out on his own, reborn, as you put it, he should have a new name. Let it be Miyamoto, so that he never forgets his birthplace. From now on, Takezo, call yourself Miyamoto. Takezo's hands went automatically to the floor, palms down. He bowed deep and loud. Yes, sir, I will do that. You should change your first name too, Takuan interjected. Why not read the Chinese characters of your name as Musashi instead of Takezo? You can keep writing your name the same as before. It's only fitting that everything should begin anew on this day of your rebirth. Terumasa, who was by this time in a very good mood, nodded his approval enthusiastically. Miyamoto Musashi, it's a good name, a very good name. We should drink to it. They moved into another room. Sake was served, and Takezo and Takuan kept his lordship company far into the night. They were joined by several of Terumasa retainers, and eventually Takuan got to his feet and performed an ancient dance. He was expert, his vivid movements creating an imaginary wall of delight. Takezo, now Musashi, watched with admiration, respect, and enjoyment as the drinking went on and on. The following day, they both left the castle. Musashi was taking his first steps into a new life, a life of discipline and training in the martial arts. During his 3-year incarceration, he had resolved to master the art of war. Takuan had his own plans. He had decided to travel about the countryside, and the time had come, he said, to part again. When they reached the town outside the castle walls, Musashi made as if to take his leave, but the monk grabbed his sleeve and said, "Isn't there someone you would like to see? Who? Ogin? Is she still alive?" he asked in bewilderment. Even in his sleep, he had never forgotten the gentle sister who had been a mother to him so long. Takuan told him that when he had attacked the Stargate at Hinagura 3 years earlier, Ogin had indeed already been taken away. Although no charges were pressed against her, she had been reluctant to return home and so went instead to stay with a relative in a village in the Sayo district. She was now living comfortably there. "Wouldn't you like to see her?" asked Takuan. She's very eager to see you. I told her 3 years ago that she would consider you dead. She should consider you dead since in one sense you were. I also told her, however, that after 3 years I would bring her a new brother, different from the old Takeso. Musashi pressed his palms together and raised them in front of his head, as he would have done in prayer before a statue of the Buddha. Not only have you taken care of me, he said with deep emotion, but you have seen to Ogen's well-being too. Takuen, you are truly a compassionate man. I don't think I will ever be able to thank you for what you have done. One way to thank me would be to let me take you to your sister. No, I don't think I should go. Hearing about her from you has been as good as meeting her. Surely you want to see her yourself, if only for a few minutes. No, I don't think so. I did die, Takuen. I do feel reborn. I don't think that now is the time to return to the past. What I have to do is take a rest